The RV Show USA is brought to you by Rockwood, building better RVs, making smarter RVers.
All right, Alan Warren, the RV Wingman, and before we bring up our next guest, I got to get something out of the way. A few weeks back, I had a guest on the show that said some things that they were not too flattering about the subject of homeschooling kids and full-time RVers. Now, while everybody may be entitled to their own opinion, I believe to paint anyone or any subject as a big blanket statement is not only inaccurate most of the time, but it actually shows our ignorance. And I admit when it comes to the subject of homeschooling, I am very ignorant. I am. Just like there are good people and bad people, there are examples of both when we talk about the subject of homeschooling. My guest today, well, she is a homeschooling mom and wife, and she is a good one of both, I'm telling you, a really good one, who can help educate me and educate us on what homeschooling is and also about being full-time RVers. So, Heather Gebbia, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Alan.
I got to tell you, I am one of your biggest fans. I really am.
Thank you.
All right, so I know we've got you for a couple of segments. I'm looking forward to, learning the real story from somebody who loves to homeschool their kids, and you're really good at it. Tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and how you became full-time RVers, a full-time RVing family, if you would.
Okay, well, we've always homeschooled our kids since the beginning, and we used to live in Florida, and my husband and I work remotely. And after a while, we realized we could homeschool and work anywhere. We don't have to stay in one place. And we thought it would be really fun to travel around the country with our kids before they grow up. And at first we thought, well, that would be kind of weird. Nobody does this with kids. So we thought we'd be the only family out there traveling around with kids. So I Googled it and found a group called Full-Time Families. It's an RV club which basically means it's families on the road. And when I found that RV club, I joined and I learned about rallies they have around the country. And we went to some rallies and met lots of great families, made some lifelong friends. We go on field trips with them. So anyway, to back up to where we were still living in our house and found out about this and that there are plenty of families that do this sort of thing on the road. We just decided to sell our house, buy an RV, and hit the road. So.
And when was that? How long ago was that, Heather?
It was almost 6 years ago.
Wow. So tell us about your family. Tell me about your boys.
I have two boys. They are 15 and 13. So they were just 10 and 8 when we hit the road almost 6 years ago. They're about to turn 16 and 14 next month. They loved the idea of traveling, and because we've always loved traveling, even when we lived in a house. So they thought it was a cool idea, and we thought we'd do it for maybe 2 years, but here we are almost 6 years later with no end in sight because we all still love it.
Well, I know you do, and I've followed you on Facebook for most of, or at least half of those years, and looks like y'all have been just about everywhere. Talk to me now about homeschooling. Why did you choose to homeschool the boys even before you became full-time RVers? And obviously you're very supportive of people that do that. What is homeschooling like, and how has RVing full-time even elevated the learning experience for your boys, do you think?
Well, homeschooling, there's so many. Can't even think about all the reasons we started to homeschool in the first place. I just felt led to do it from the beginning when they were, not even school age yet. And once we started, I just never looked back. It just has always worked for us. I feel like it gives us a very flexible schedule. We don't always go by the school year. We school year round, and then that gives us flexibility to not do school for a week or two when we go to some place that we would just rather explore than sit at home and read books.
How do you teach your sons, though? They're different ages, or is that considered? Are they in different grades? You're the one mom, the one teacher. How do you separate their lesson plans? How does that all take place?
Well, they're 2 years apart, so yeah, they would be in separate grades. And there's some things we do together. We read history books together and do science, and obviously all the things we learn traveling on the road, we do together. And then they do their own math because they would be in different levels in math. And they do their math online. I don't even have to teach them. There's online classes they take for math and reading. They both would be at different reading levels and reading different books because my older son's in high school, so obviously he needs to do more advanced things.
From a time standpoint, from your investment of being the teacher of your sons, what does that entail? Is that a full-time gig for you? Is it something that's there's a lot of online resources for parents like you that you can draw from to teach your children, so you can still have a job and earn an income on the side?
Yeah, it's not that time-consuming at all. It was more time-consuming when they were little, but now they can do so much on their own online without me. But even when they were little, homeschoolers can really get their school day done in a lot less time than if they were going to a public school, because with a classroom full of 30 kids, it just takes longer to teach that many kids. With just 2 kids, it just doesn't take that much time. We could finish school in 2 or 3 hours every day.
I would imagine that by living on the road, so to speak, and traveling all over our great nation, it's given your boys such a great perspective that other children their age, teenagers, probably will never have their entire life, and those are learning opportunities. Talk to me about that and some of the things that y'all have done and seen.
You are right about that. We have visited over 40 national parks in this country. Our kids used to like to do the junior ranger programs when they were younger, so they have at least 40 national park junior ranger badges, and they've learned a lot there's so much to learn at all the national parks in this country. And before we started traveling, I didn't even know about most of them. I had no idea all of these amazing places existed in America. And now I'm just like, wow, so many people need to get out of their house and explore these amazing places. So the Junior Ranger program was really excellent in our first few years. We went to Washington, D.C. one year, and that is extremely educational. We went to Ford's Theater and learned about Abraham Lincoln. We went to Arlington National Cemetery, the National Archives. There's just so much to learn about our country right there in D.C. We went to Oregon and learned a lot about Lewis and Clark. And
it sounds like fun, but it is, as I say, education doesn't have to be boring. It can be fun, and it can be very meaningful and significant. It sounds like it has been for your sons.
Yes, learning can be a lot of fun. And I think if kids have fun learning, then they want to continue learning for the rest of their lives. Even before we started traveling, I always tried to make learning fun and not boring. I actually have fun homeschooling them, and I've learned so much history in a more fun way than when I was in school. I thought history was boring when I was in school.
But when you actually go to a place and you get to see Washington, D.C., or you get to see these beautiful national parks, it brings it to life, I guess.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Would you describe your typical school week, Heather, with your boys?
So like I said, we school year-round and then take off anytime we need to if we're in a place we want to explore. But if we're at home doing school, then our day starts out with reading the Bible, and then we read some history books, and we always have either a historical fiction book or some fiction fun chapter book to read aloud together. So we do that. And then I go back to work, and my kids do the rest of their school on their own. They do their online math, their reading. They're also taking college classes online. My 15-year-old has already passed 2 college classes, and he's about to pass 2 more, and the 13-year-old's working on his first one.
Hey, Heather, hang on, folks. She is a homeschooling supermom. Yes, she is. Heather and her husband, Chris Gebbia, and their 2 kids. They're also full-time RVers who are probably the richest people you will ever meet, rich with experiences and incredible stories. We're going to continue our discussion on the subject of homeschooling while living as full-time RVers right after this quick timeout. Y'all don't go anywhere.
The RV Show USA. Start living the RV dream today.
And a big old wingman shout out to Stuart and Kathy Miles, who are listening over in Daytona Beach. Thank you all for always tuning in. On the RV Show USA guest line is a full-time RVer that's a homeschooling super mom. She is educating her sons while she and her husband are living a pretty rich-sounding life. I imagine that you've got so many great memories from the places that you and Chris and your boys have visited, Heather.
Yes, amazing memories. I'm so thankful.
There are so many more families today that are homeschooling than ever before. What are you seeing in terms of popularity of homeschooling and popularity among RVers? What do you see?
Well, this year, things have been so crazy because of COVID. So obviously, I think most of the country started homeschooling in March, not by choice.
Yeah.
But I don't know. After several months of that, I think several families realized homeschooling is not so bad, and some probably have chosen to continue homeschooling and not send their kids back to school this fall.
What about somebody that just wants to start homeschooling? Is it a huge endeavor, or what do people have to do to, follow state requirements and mandates? Is that a hard thing to get into, or not really?
Not really. It's legal in all 50 states. Probably the first thing someone should do is go to the website for hslda.org. It stands for Homeschool Legal Defense Association. And that has all the homeschool laws for every state in the country. And we've been members of that since we started homeschooling. And Florida is a pretty relaxed state for homeschooling. We meet with a teacher once a year, and she evaluates our portfolio just to make sure we're doing what we're supposed to do and making progress. But every state's different. So the first thing would be to find out what your state requirements are.
What about some of the biggest myths that you would like to dispel about homeschooling on the road? Talk to me about that.
Well, most often people hear, oh, what about socialization? That's the number one question homeschoolers get. How are they going to socialize if they're not in school? And honestly, that has never been a problem. When we lived in a house, we were part of a huge homeschool group that we did field trips and activities together all the time. And then since we got on the road, it's the same thing. Since we joined full-time families and we meet up with other, what we now call it road schooling instead of homeschooling. Mm-hmm. And we meet up with other road school families and do activities together, field trips together. In fact, it's almost too much socialization sometimes. I feel like sometimes we have to go somewhere like to another campground without families around for a little while just so we can get some schoolwork done and not be so busy with all the socializing.
Is it difficult for you to be, mom and teacher? I mean, I know a lot of kids probably have a difficult time in looking at their mother or their father as their quote-unquote teacher because they've only known them as mom or dad. But is that because you've been doing it, I guess, the entire lives of your boys, it's not a big deal, but I imagine that could be a challenge for some people.
I think it would be a challenge for someone whose kids have gone to school and then they decide to homeschool them. Then that would be a difficult transition possibly for the kids to look at their mom and dad as teacher. For us, it was never an issue because we've always homeschooled. So I've been their teacher since the day they were born. I taught them to walk and talk, and then letters, colors, numbers. I've been teaching them since they were born, so it's really no different to just start school.
What kind of qualities do you think that it takes to be a good teacher, a good homeschool teacher?
Well, patience would be one thing for sure. I mean, any teacher, even at school, you have to have patience with kids. And I think just to not take it too seriously, to have fun. Like, remember that kids, they only get one childhood, and it's going to go by so quickly. They need time to be kids, time to get outside and play and enjoy their childhood and not always be stuck in a book or doing workbooks, but just And if we're having a bad school day, sometimes I just need to say, okay, you know what? Let's just go do something else. Let's go play if we're at a campground that has mini golf or something, or just go do something fun if something's stressful one day, and we'll come back to it the next day.
I would imagine the opportunities for learning, though, about nature and plants and wildlife and astronomy, the stars. I mean, I think that the opportunities to open our minds are just endless when you are living on the road and doing it the way you guys are doing it, Heather.
That's absolutely right. We've done an astronomy class at Bryce Canyon National Park after dark. That was just fascinating. And we've learned about a lot of different wildlife. We've seen so much amazing wildlife around the country. And right now we're parked at a friend's house, and they have a farm. So we are learning about their animals. They have chickens, goats, horses, you name it. They have all kinds of animals here to learn about.
There's such a difference between reading it in a book or looking it down at a screen and learning your lesson versus looking out your own eyeballs at the real world and feeling something cold and hot and smelling things that you can't do when you're just virtually watching online. Tell me about some of your favorite lessons, the favorite things that you have done as a teacher that you're proudest of, Heather.
Oh. Now you've stumped me. I can't think of anything right off the top of my head. But I'll tell you my favorite place we've gone was to Banff National Park in Alberta, Canada last year. That was honestly the most beautiful place we've ever been. And we did so much hiking. I don't know if anything can ever top that. That was my favorite place. And I think anytime we go to a national park, it's educational because you learn so much about the area.
What about a journal? Do you encourage your boys to keep a journal? It sounds like what a great thing to do, all the different places that y'all have visited.
Yes, they did keep a journal for the first few years on the road. They haven't kept up with it as much. I guess things get to be a little different when they become teenagers. They just don't feel like writing in a journal anymore. They don't feel like doing Junior Ranger books anymore. So, yeah, they did used to keep a journal, and I'm thankful we have that from the first few years on the road. But lately they don't do that, but I keep a blog, so I write about everywhere we go and everything we do, so later they can go back and read all that.
What about support? You said that you're part of a group of other families that live, in full-time RVing and they homeschool their children. Is there a lot of support out there if somebody wanted to get started? Because of this COVID, as you know, people are changing lifestyles a lot, quite drastically. Is the support there, or is it just a real steep learning curve?
Oh, no, there is so much support. Full-time families is an excellent place to start if you want to learn how to live on the road with kids, homeschooling or road schooling. Anybody could just go and learn from the Full-Time Families website or the Facebook page. And they are always having meetups and get-togethers at various campgrounds where you can meet families that have done it. That was our first thing we did when we moved out of our house. We went to a Full-Time Families rally, and it was the best thing we ever did because we learned so much from the families that had already been doing it.
And the boys still love it. After 6 years of being on the road, they still love living in an RV and traveling our great country.
Yes, I'm surprised they do. When we stayed in Georgia for 3 months this summer and actually considered buying a house because we liked the area and thought, well, we're not traveling as much. Maybe we should settle down and get a house. And both boys were like, no way. We don't want to live in a house. We want to keep traveling.
I love that. Listen, Heather, we're pretty much out of time, up against the clock. Got to go. But I always enjoy visiting with you. You're so nice and so helpful and sweet, and I just appreciate it a lot.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's so fun to talk to you, Ellen.
And thank you for telling us about what homeschooling is. I think it's nice to know, there's some really good teachers out there. So best of luck to you and your family, and we will talk again. All right, Heather?
Okay, thank you.
All right, adios. All right, so there you go, folks. While full-time RVing isn't for everybody, it is certainly becoming more and more popular, and more families are doing what Heather and her husband are doing. Yes, they are. They're living full-time on the road and homeschooling their kids. as you hear, it can be done, and it is being done right for sure. We're going to have to leave it there. Hope you'll join us this coming Wednesday in our live stream, as we'll have Heather on with us to answer maybe some of your questions that you may have about full-time RVing or about homeschooling. We live stream every single Wednesday starting at 7 p.m. Central, and you can catch us on our Facebook page or many of the Facebook groups that we have. Just go to thervshowusa.com, and you can kind of go off from there and join us, like I said, on Wednesday night for our live stream starting at 7 p.m. Central. Until next time, I'm Alan Warren, the RV Wingman. Be safe, have fun, play nice, and what? Don't leave your good manners at home. So long, everybody.
Helping you to learn so you won't get burned. He's back on the radio again.